possibility that this site is more than 27,000 years old, and brought to the world's attention the mystery of Gunung Padang in Indonesia.
Through the use of LiDAR, they have discovered that there are enormous structures underneath that go kilometers.
In 2014, a team of Indonesian scientists drilled a narrow core into the side of a jungle hill in West Java. They expected to hit volcanic rock. They didn't. At 27 meters down, the depth of a 9-story building, the equipment detected something that stopped the entire team cold. Not rock, not clay, not natural geological formation. Chambers. Sealed, structured, deliberately constructed chambers buried beneath a hill that the outside world had always assumed was just a hill. The lead researcher, Dr. Hilman Natawidjaja, a Caltech-trained geologist with decades of fieldwork, stared at the ground, penetrating radar readouts without speaking. Then he asked his technician to run the scan again. Same result. He requested independent verification from a second team using different equipment. Same result. What those scans revealed was published in a peer-reviewed journal. It was covered by Nature, by Scientific American, by National Geographic. And then, within months, it was retracted. The authors disagreed. They are still fighting it. But the data is out there now, and once you understand what that radar actually found beneath this Indonesian hill, you will understand why the establishment needed this story to disappear. Because if the findings are accurate, the structure buried beneath Gunung Padang is not just older than the pyramids of Giza. It is older than Stonehenge, older than every known ancient civilization on Earth, and it changes everything we thought we knew about who built the ancient world. Share this with everyone you know, because Gunung Padang in West Java has been ignored by Western archaeology for decades. And the reason it's ignored is the same reason you've never heard of it. What was found here doesn't fit the timeline, it doesn't fit the textbooks, and it doesn't fit the story mainstream science has been telling us about how old human civilization actually is. Before we break down what the AI scans found, why this paper was retracted under circumstances its own authors called improper, and what these buried chambers mean for every ancient structure we thought we understood, subscribe to the channel right now. We are doing the analysis that mainstream archaeology has decided it doesn't want to conduct. To understand why what's buried beneath this hill is so impossible, you need to understand what the textbooks say human beings were capable of 27,000 years ago. The answer is simple: not much. According to the standard model of human prehistory 27,000 years ago, during the height of the last ice age, humans in Southeast Asia were small, mobile hunter-gatherer groups. Basic stone tools, no permanent settlements, no organized labor, no monumental construction. That is the story that has shaped every archaeology program at every university for the last century. Now let me tell you about the hill. Gunung Padang sits in Cianjur Regency in West Java, 4 hours south of Jakarta. In the local Sundanese language, it means Mountain of Enlightenment. The local people have considered it sacred for as long as anyone can remember, calling it a Punden Berundak, a stepped pyramid. Archaeologists have known about the surface terraces since 1914. Tourists visit. It appears in Graham Hancock's Netflix documentary, Ancient Apocalypse. The conventional view was comfortable, an ancient sacred site. Surface terraces built perhaps 2,000 to 4,000 years ago. Impressive, worth preserving, but nothing that required rewriting human history. Until someone decided to look underneath it. Between 2011 and 2014, Dr. Natawidjaja and his team of 11 researchers conducted the most comprehensive geological survey ever attempted at the site. They weren't studying the surface, they were asking a question nobody had bothered to ask before. What is this hill actually made of? They used ground-penetrating radar, the same technology used to scan beneath Egyptian pyramids and beneath Stonehenge. They deployed seismic tomography, geoelectric analysis, and direct core drilling. And what those instruments found, layer by layer, dismantled everything. The surface terraces, 3,000 to 4,000 years old. Expected. The second layer beneath, 7,500 to 8,000 years old. Ancient, but within range. Then, they drilled deeper. The innermost core showed something that standard geological process cannot produce. Rock that had been meticulously sculpted, columnar stones, arranged like bricks, right angles, organized voids. Evidence of deliberate, purposeful, large-scale human engineering. The carbon dating placed this innermost layer at between 16,000 and 27,000 years old. Think about what this actually means. Human beings were constructing a multi-layered megalithic pyramid during the last ice age, at a time when they were supposed to be wandering with stone tools, not 4,000 years ago, not 8,000 years ago, 27,000 years ago. That is more than twice as old as Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which currently holds the title of oldest known megalithic structure and which itself rewrote human history when it was discovered. And the GPR didn't just find walls and floors, it found chambers. Empty, sealed, deliberately constructed voids at 12 meters, 20 meters, and 27 meters depth. They were built, and nobody has been inside them. Here's the first shocking twist. In October 2023, Dr. Natawidjaja's team published their full findings in the journal Archaeological Prospection. Nature reported on it. Scientific American ran an analysis. The discovery was framed as potentially the most significant archaeological finding of the century. 5 months later, the journal retracted it. The stated reason? Concerns about the radiocarbon dating methodology. The editors argued that the soil samples weren't definitively associated with human construction. On the surface, that sounds like a legitimate scientific dispute, but here's the catch. All 11 authors, not some of them, all 11, formally disagreed with the retraction. They submitted a detailed rebuttal, arguing the methodology was sound and the retraction was premature. And here's what the critics have not been able to explain. The retraction challenged the radiocarbon dating. It did not, and could not, explain away the GPR data. The geometric regularity of the underground structures, the right angles, the organized voids, those are in the scans. Visible, reproducible, not subject to the same dating disputes. You can argue about when something was built. You can't argue about whether it was built. And the GPR is very clear on that question. Think about how violently this contradicts the way science is supposed to work. 34 Indonesian archaeologists signed a petition questioning the team's methods before the full data was even published, not after examining the findings. Before. When the establishment moves to suppress a discovery before it has been fully examined, you have to ask yourself one question. What are they afraid of finding? Then came the second devastating revelation, and this one doesn't come from the retracted paper. It comes from what was already known about this region, and what nobody was connecting. Gunung Padang sits in a part of the world scientists now call Sundaland. During the last ice age, when the deepest layers of the hill were being constructed, sea levels were dramatically lower than they are today. The shallow seas between Indonesia, Malaysia, and mainland Southeast Asia were not seas at all. They were land, a vast continent, roughly the size of Western Europe. That entire landmass is now underwater, submerged, not by catastrophe, not by flood, by the slow, inevitable rise of the sea. As the glaciers melted and the world warmed, it took thousands of years, and it consumed everything. Here's the deal. If humans were building at Gunung Padang 27,000 years ago, they were not building in isolation. They were part of a civilization that occupied land that no longer exists. A civilization whose cities are gone, whose monuments are gone, whose entire archaeological record is sitting on the ocean floor. We have spent 200 years of modern archaeology looking for the origins of human civilization in the places we can easily excavate. Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, we built the entire model of human prehistory. around the sites that happen to survive above the waterline. But if there was a sophisticated culture on Sundaland, virtually none of their built environment would have made it. It would be under the Java Sea, under the South China Sea. And get this, sonar surveys of the seafloor around Indonesia have already found anomalies, geometric patterns that don't match known geological formations. They have not been formally investigated. There is no funding, no institutional will, because investigating them would require acknowledging that the textbook timeline might be wrong. Gunung Padang is not just a hill with chambers underneath. It is the only piece of an entire civilization's built environment that happened to be built on high enough ground to survive. That is why it matters. That is why the retraction happened so fast. And then the final game-changing truth, because Gunung Padang is not alone. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, confirmed at 12,000 years old, built by people the previous textbook said weren't capable of building anything. History rewritten. The Yonaguni Monument off Japan, a submerged stepped structure with right angles and carved markings sitting 25 meters below the Pacific. The Longyao Caves in China, 24 hand-carved underground chambers found beneath bottomless ponds in 1992, with 1 million cubic meters of removed rock and not a single historical document explaining who built them. Each dismissed when found, each producing data, when subjected to modern scanning technology that the conventional timeline cannot explain. And every one of them is in Asia, the region that receives less than 12% of the global archaeological research budget, despite containing more than half the world's population and some of its oldest inhabited landscapes. The data from Gunung Padang is consistent with one hypothesis that mainstream archaeology has classified as fringe, that a sophisticated human civilization existed before the last ice age ended. That built on a scale we are only beginning to understand. That was erased not by war or plague, but by the rising of the sea, a slow catastrophe that consumed an entire inhabited continent over thousands of years. Graham Hancock calls it a lost civilization. The academic establishment calls it mythology. The GPR beneath Gunung Padang calls it architecture. Think about what it means to stand at the top of Gunung Padang today. The surface terraces are quiet. Tourists take photographs. The stone columns rise from the hilltop exactly as they have for thousands of years. And beneath your feet, beneath the layers that generations of Sundanese people considered sacred, there are chambers that no living human being has ever entered. Chambers sealed before Stonehenge was built, before the first Egyptian pharaoh was crowned, before agriculture existed anywhere on earth. Someone built them. We don't know their name. We have no record of their language, no grave goods, no pottery, no written text. If they left a history, it is on the floor of the Java Sea. All we have is the hill, and the data from inside it, and the question that no retraction, no petition, no institutional silence has been able to erase. What is inside those chambers? Dr. Natawidjaja said it best after the retraction. No anger. No attacks on his critics, just this. We know very little about our human history. He's right, and someday, when the funding comes, when the political will exists, when the resistance finally breaks, someone is going to open those sealed rooms for the first time in 27,000 years. What they find will either confirm the textbooks or rewrite them entirely. I know which one I think it will be. Stay tuned, subscribe and hit the bell, and drop one word in the comments, and just one, describing what you think is inside those sealed chambers. I'll be reading every single one.